All right, folks, welcome back to the Gearwrench Garage. Started off with coffee, but doggone it if I'm not going to have a beer now that we're sitting here talking about engines and whatnot. Hey, do me a favor. If you're watching this video, please go ahead and click the like button, leave a comment, and if you're inclined, subscribe. But yeah, give me a like, please. Help grow the channel and do interesting stuff. So one thing I wanted to do is touch on timing belt, how to time this engine, this Audi 2.0. And it's really easy to do when you have the engine out. So obviously, one quick thing I wanted to mention is the crank sprocket has a little, they call it a diamond washer. This thing's like 30, 40 bucks if you try to buy a new one. It goes inside the crank sprocket. I'm not 100% sure what it does. I guess it somehow kind of prevents some kind of friction against the crank snout. But just make sure when you take off your crank sprocket in the first place, you don't lose it. And when you're putting it back on, you put it back on the correct way, and it's in there. So the washer, there's no one way to put it in. Either side's fine. But the sprocket can only go on one way. It's got a little tab that sits on the tab of the crank snout. So that guy goes in just like that. And as it sits right there, you can see we're just about perfectly on TDC, tap dead center, meaning the piston of cylinder 1 is level with the block. So it can't make contact with the valves. And so this crank bolt is technically a TTY, and you should replace it, but I'm not going to. When it comes time here in a little bit, I'm going to give it some ugga-duggas with my impact, and we'll call that good. The torque spec, I believe, is 90 Newton meters with an additional 90-degree turn. I'm going to put my half-inch impact on it and give it some ugga-duggas until it quits tightening. But just to play it safe, I don't want to move the crank really because I just did because it's not connected to the timing belt, right? So it's not connected to the cylinder head. So the valves aren't going to move. I don't want to move the crank because the pistons will go up and down. All right, so what we'll do is we've already installed the water pump. Not a big deal. Just make sure that the O-ring behind it is seated properly. And if you're doing this job with an older water pump, replace, this one's a metal impeller. The inside's metal, a little bit more dependable. But make sure, regardless, if you're reusing your water pump, you replace the O-ring. And these bolts are 15 Newton meters, boom, boom, boom. And then the front cover here, not cover, but this front seal cover, I did that previously. It mates to the oil pan, and I replaced that front crank seal. Make sure you get that done. And then this roller here is torqued to 35 Newton meters. So you got your water pump, your crank sprocket, your idler, and there's two other things that need to go on. You have your top idler, and this goes on a certain way. And this is torqued to 25 Newton meters. All right. Okay, so that's good. And then lastly, you have your tensioner. And so your tensioner just kind of slides on and leave it loose for now because you're gonna use this to tension your you're gonna do the final torque to 25 Newton meters once you've tensioned your timing belt. Once you have your timing belt on and you, geez, I'm killing that, right? You're gonna torque this down once you get your appropriate tension. When you get your timing belt on and you get your appropriate tension. All right. So I just want to make a note that I've already installed the head. I use the cam securing tool, like the Audi tool. I think this is actually an Ossenmacher, but the back end of your cylinder head, if you're at TDC for #1 cylinder, this just slides right in, all right? Now, it's not, let me show you that again. If you're at TDC of #1 cylinder, this tool just slides right in, all right? It shouldn't be any like interference. You shouldn't have to bang it in. It's not a perfect means to get your cams secured, but your cams aren't going to turn any appreciable way with this in there. They'll turn a little bit, but they're not going to turn like a massive way. So I'm going to just put this in there just to make sure as we're putting the timing belt on, we're immobilizing the cams, which again, it's probably not necessary, but it's a precaution. And so I should say, it goes without being said, that before you install the head, you want to make sure that your #1 cylinder is at TDC. Just so when you come to do the timing belt now, I don't have to mess with it. Again, the crank and the head are not connected at the moment. So if I turn the crank too much, those pistons are going to come up and interfere with some of those open valves that are there right now. All right, now we have our head secured. The reason I diverted it to talk about the tool is I used the tool to secure the cams while I tightened the sprocket bolt. This is a new sprocket bolt. I think it's 60 Newton meters plus 180 degree turn to get the final torque. So that's on there. And at this point, we can go ahead and route our timing belt through. So timing belt, pretty simple. This is a new timing belt. Well, it was a new timing belt for the last time I reassembled this engine, but it has 0 miles on it. It does have some smudge on it, but whatever. It shouldn't prevent it from working well. So the way I do it is I route it through the crank sprocket, and then down this way across the cam, under the idler. And so if you're sharp-eyed, you're going to see that this thing turned a little bit. The crank turned a little bit, which is fine, right? The timing is still on. But you gotta take the slack out of the belt. You gotta take the slack out of the belt by making sure it pulls down and it's seated on the crank pulley, and then that way you can get the belt on. So now the belt's on. Last thing we need to do is tighten it at the tensioner. Okay, so I know you guys hate when that moves like that. You're gonna use, I believe, a 6mm hex key. Well, it is 8. There you go. All right. So you might not have noticed, but right here, there's a little tab, and that tab is aligned in the center of that space on the tensioner. All right, if you look real close, there's a little tab, and then there's a gap on the other end of that tensioner. So you rotate the tensioner till that tab is in the align with that space. That's how you know your alignment is good with the tensioner. And then now you can torque to 25 Newton meters. All right, so I believe we're good. And so our timing marks still line up. I got my crank sprocket at TDC for number 1. And I'll just mark it again just for reference. So you can see that it's at TDC. Our cam sprocket is at TDC right there. And then we'll spin it a couple times to make sure everything still lines up. And then we'll be done with timing if it does. All right, so with the stock engine like this, people get so spun up about getting your timing marks right. I mean, we're not getting super precise. Clearly, you could see your timing marks are like this is on this tooth, right? So for this 200 horsepower OEM engine, your cam timing isn't going to be that precise. This isn't like a 1,000 horsepower race engine with all kinds of precise cam timing. If you just get it on that tooth, you're going to be good. All right. So I removed my cam holding tool so the cams can spin. At this point, everything is torqued and the engine should be in time. I'll be confident to say it is in time. And we'll spin the crank to take out any potential slack. And if that is in fact good, there we go. That's 1 rotation. Two rotations. Three rotations. And 4 rotations. And hopefully all my marks are still good. And yep, my crank sprocket or cam sprocket is good. My crank sprocket is good. And you can see back here, these 2 tabs, or these 2 little these 2, 1 and 2 little gaps in the cams should be facing each other with these back lobes facing each other at that angle. So that it is. We have our timing on, and that is a big step. All right. Thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to give us a thumbs up and leave some comments. So if there's anything I did that you think is a hack way of doing things, let me know, and we'll talk about it. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.